Hello, and welcome to Embracing the Fight. I am Erica Lamar, your digital creator and host. And if you've been with me since January of 2023, you will know that Embracing the Fight is about normalizing the conversations surrounding physical and mental health issues and concerns. Now, why is that important? If you think about it, when you're riding along the highway, there are other cars that are passing by you that have passengers in them. What if one of those people decides that today is the day that they want to end their life and they turn their car around facing traffic and you just happen to be the person coming towards them? Imagine if someone had talked to them prior to them getting into the car. Imagine if they were able to speak truly from their heart, to let someone know that they were hurting. Then that accident never would have occurred and your life would never have been affected. So that's what embracing the fight is all about. It's being able to speak truly from your heart to get healing. And our guests come on and they talk about their stories because they know that there is someone out there that could use the words that are in their heart. Now, if you have a chance, please take some time out today to subscribe to Embracing the Fight. It is on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and X. The only difference on Instagram, it is embracing the fight underscore, but everywhere else, it's embracing the fight. And I just want to thank you in advance for joining the Embracing the Fight community. Now that I've gotten the business of everything out of the way, you will see that I have a very beautiful guest on screen, and this is Dr. Beverley Boothe. So, Dr. Boothe, can you tell us who you are?
So nice to be here, Erica. So I am a licensed clinical counselor, social worker,
Mhm.
and I have a practice, two practices for dealing with mental health. One's called Life Enrichment Counseling Center. We work with children, adolescents, and adults and families. The other one is Marriage Healing Center, where we work with couples. We're located in Northern Virginia. So we've got four different locations right now, and I'm also now a podcaster. So it is a pleasure to be here.
All right. Thank you so much for being a guest. Now, everybody knows that when people come on Embracing the Fight, I have come in contact with them in some way or I've known them for years. So, Dr. Booth, or do you want me to call you Beverly? What would you?
Beverly's fine.
Okay, Beverly. How did we meet?
Well, we are taking the seven-figure podcast class together.
Mhm.
And that time, I was looking for people to come on my podcast since, I'm still fairly new at it. And you volunteered, and part of it was I wanted people that have been through struggle. We've got a similar mission in
Mhm.
helping people through different trials, struggles in life. And, when we talked briefly, you mentioned what you've been through. And so I had the privilege of interviewing you for my podcast. I want to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
And so, yeah, since I've been through my own struggle, you thought it would be a good idea for me to be on yours.
Okay, and that's kind of a great segue into the title of this episode. This is episode 117, A Survivor Story. So, Beverly, why did we name this episode a survivor story?
Good question. We named it because, I've been through some difficulties in my life, and I am a survivor. I'm a survivor of breast cancer. And also during the time right after I was diagnosed, actually, right, probably about 6 months after I was diagnosed, I also went through a divorce as well. And, I had to really work on navigating through all of that and to get to the other side. And so
Okay.
that's why we have that title.
Okay, so let's start with the divorce because a lot of people don't understand how stressful, a divorce can be and how that stress can manifest, into other illnesses in our body. So, what was it like for you when well, let's start with the good times. How long were you married?
Let me see. I was married for about 10 years. And, I met my ex through work.
Okay.
And, we dated for probably a good 3 years before we got engaged, and then we got married. And, initially things were good.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, sort of things happened in a relationship that caused a rift.
Okay.
And, you know, even though I'm a counselor, I had to make some decisions in terms of what would be best moving forward with for me as well as my child. So we end up divorcing, and we co-parent now, so we get along fine. But it was a difficult time making that decision
Mm-hmm.
and going through it. During that time it was very stressful,
Okay.
and yeah, it was trying to figure out then how to navigate through just managing my emotions, especially since I was working with other people and
Mm-hmm.
trying to make sure that they're okay. And it's funny, I remember going to the gym, how I deal with my stress. I really work out.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going to the gym, and I met one of my clients who at the gym at the time, and he came up to me and he said, "Ah, guess what? Guess what? I want to thank you because you helped save my marriage." And at
Oh,
that time, it was like, I was like, oh
it
my
was like
gosh.
marriage.
I know. Well, it was like great, but then I thought, oh my, I sort of saying, God, mine fell apart, but I had to make a decision and what was going to be best for me. And I knew that was the path that I needed to take.
Okay. So I know there's lots of women out there right now, some that are suffering in silence and they are just staying in their marriage because they're like, I don't have the funds to move out. And if I take my kids, I'm going to place my kids into a less desirable situation. Or some of them are saying, you know what, we've just grown apart and I don't know what to do. What was your decision-making process that finally allowed you to get yourself free?
I think part of the major piece for me is, I have certain core values, and one of them is honesty, integrity. The trust was broken, I think, for me at that time. And even though it was difficult and, it was really hard to make that decision, I realized that I needed to. So it took me a while. It didn't happen overnight.
Mhm.
And so I was dealing with a lot of stress, but we really had grown apart by that time because when the trust is broken, for me, it's really hard to get it back.
Mhm.
So so probably took me probably a good maybe year and a half before I got to that place of deciding that it was time to move in the direction of divorce.
Okay.
So it was a process. In that process, though, I did do a lot of writing,
Mhm.
and I decided I've always known that I wanted to write a book. I had no idea what it was going to be about.
Okay.
And I just felt within my spirit. It's funny because I went to this conference and I was getting a massage, and this woman was very, very spiritual.
Okay.
And she was massaging me, and she said, that's while I was married. It was like years before this
Mhm.
divorce. And she said, I see a book. And I was like, what do you mean? And it's probably about a month before that
Mhm.
that I felt within my spirit that God was saying, you're going to write a book. And I was like, I don't know what, Lord. Maybe it should be on couples, not to save marriages. I don't know. And
Mhm.
then she said, well, let me finish the massage. And then, I'll sort of see what comes. She said, maybe it's the Bible. So as she finished the massage, she went to the Bible and said, no, it's not the Bible. And she said, you're going to write a book. And I was like, really? I was like, because probably like a month ago, I was like, got that within my spirit to write a book.
Mhm.
So anyway, fast forward, when I was going through that, I really worked on sort of writing down some of my thoughts and some of my feelings. So probably, but it took me a while. I mean, I wrote, stop to the process. And so eventually I was able to write a book called Mended, Healing Your Heart After a Broken Relationship.
Okay.
And so eventually, that's how I was able to look back and look at the process of how I was able to work through my own healing to get to the other side and how I can help others to be able to do the same thing.
Okay. And if someone's listening to this podcast and they want to get this book, how do they find it?
Well, they can go to Amazon. Again, it's Mended, Healing Your Heart After a Broken Relationship. You can also put in Dr. Beverley Boothe. You can also go to my website. It is yourlovetalk.com, and the book is there.
Okay, so now you're at the point where you're divorced. You've written this book. You feel like you're about to get a fresh start and you're ready to get out there, but then you go to the doctor. What prompted you to go to the doctor to get checked out and find out that you had an issue? Or was this just a routine checkup and you found out that you had an issue?
Yeah, it was. I actually have very dense breast,
Hmm.
and I'm also have a lot of cysts in both breasts.
Okay.
So from early on, my doctor always recommended that I maintain my mammogram, as well as there are times that I had to do a sonogram just to make sure that there were still cysts. So I've always sort of done a follow up with that, and I think I was probably due. It was I usually try to do my physicals when my insurance is going to end, like just before the insurance ends. And so it's right around December, and I was like, okay, I got to get this done. And I started off with a sonogram because I guess an ultrasound, just because that's how they normally do it for me with my breast.
Hmm.
And so I remember it was probably about 6 months after I went to the divorce, and I finally got to the place 6 months where I felt like I could let go. It's like, okay, starting over,
Right.
divorce is, and actually I was still going through divorce, but I was separated at the time, but I was able to release.
Hmm.
And but I was stressed for probably a good year and a half to 2 years.
Okay.
Anyway, so went to get a sonogram, and I'm always multitasking. So I remember I was in a training, but I had an appointment for the ultrasound. So I was on the table listening to put it my ear plugs in my ear, listening to
Hmm.
the someone talking. And normally, when they're doing a sonogram, I'm usually watching the screen. Sometimes they have the screen sort of turned. But I remember she was going over a particular spot, and she was going over again and over again. So I stopped what I was doing to look at what she was doing, to look at the screen. And I said, "Is everything okay?" And then she said, "Yeah, well, just checking something." And then she said, "Well, okay, I'm going to go to the radiologist, right?" So she went. And in that moment, I felt something's wrong. Now, I've been to this before. I've had other biopsies, but in this moment, I felt something was off.
Hmm.
They come back in, the radiologists come back in, they go over that spot again. And they said, we're going to recommend that you have a biopsy. It might be nothing, but we want to just make sure, there's a spot here that we're not sure about. So said, okay. And it was right before I was going to travel to Toronto to see my family. My family lives in Canada.
Hmm.
And I just felt within my spirit something's off. So I was there, went to visit, and I had to wait for the biopsy for January. So I went home, and I just felt within my spirit that there was a problem at this time.
Hmm.
Didn't say a whole lot. I think I kind of stayed a little bit quiet. And then when I got back, I did have the follow up, the biopsy, and that's when a call came in.
Okay.
Um, and the nurse practitioner said, we need you to come in. This is now my surgeon. I had a surgeon from before that was monitoring, so they said I want you to come in for an appointment. So
Hmm.
then I knew it was off. It was funny. I was at work when the call came in, and I was interviewing. I have my own business. I was interviewing a clinician at the time. And when
Wow.
the call came in, I was near the end. I had to even I just excuse myself because I knew I didn't want to miss this call because I felt something was wrong. So when I talked to the nurse practitioner and she said you need to come in, I said, "Is it cancer?" And she didn't want to say, obviously, on the phone because they're trying to be careful. And I said, "I just need to know because I feel like that there's something wrong." And then
Hmm.
she said yes.
Hmm.
And so I had to go back to the interview.
Right.
Try to be strong. And the lady knew something was wrong, and I just told her I just got a bad diagnosis. I think I told her I had a diagnosis of cancer, and she was totally gracious. That was 2014, January 2014.
Hmm.
And I hired her, by the way, so she's still with me today.
Well, that's great.
um yeah, she came back and forth, but anyway, and then I had to go in to see the surgeon after that, and I took my brother with me at the time, so I could hear, because it's hard when you are getting that kind of information. There's a lot of information happening, so you really need to have somebody with you to help, to listen, to help advocate, whatever it is that you need. And so in that time, I took him so he could take notes, so I can try to take in what she's saying, because it's really overwhelming when you're trying to understand what it is, what's actually going on. Then she decided to schedule surgery for me, to remove the lump, which she did. And so I was diagnosed with invasive ductal carcinoma, which is like a typical cancer for a lot of women.
So, which stage were you in when they found out that you had cancer?
Well, at that time, well, they took out the lump, and also they took out some lymph nodes as well. So
Mhm.
they eventually staged me at 1B. So it was still early, thank God. I'm grateful. I think because I was always checking
Yes.
once a year for my mastectomy, but I think I was also at one point they were having me go almost like 6 months to get a sonogram. So that was very helpful. I was checking my breast, probably not every single month, and I know I should have, but
Mhm.
but yeah, I was still trying to, keep, because it was so hard you have to almost like know your breast very well when you have a lot of cysts, to
Mhm.
see if there's any changes. Are there
Right.
additional cysts? And I probably have like 12 in one breast and maybe 10 in another. So it's really hard to sort of maintain. That's why they had me doing the sonograms. Um, but anyway, so yeah, they said I was in the moderate aggressive stage. So they decided to go ahead with chemo.
Mhm.
And I think I may have had, got how many rounds? It's a few months of every 2 or 3 weeks of chemo.
Mhm.
Um, and it's interesting, when I had the chemo, I wanted, one of the things I did do, I actually wanted my quiet time. When you sit there and you're having this in your system. But I had amazing, friends and family members. My mom flew in from Toronto. My sister flew in to sit with me for the chemo I think for the first rounds,
That's great.
go to the doctor. And at first, I was like, I'm good. I'm good. And I'm glad that they didn't listen. They actually came and decided that, we're going to be with you. Then I had another, a colleague from work who, she was like, I'm going to be with you. You know what I mean? So she was there and she said, even if you don't want me there to do the chemo, to talk, I will just sit quietly.
Mhm.
And so that's what she did. And then we talked when I felt like it. And then other times she just said quietly. And that was really helpful, just to have a presence there. So
Mhm.
went through that, and I got sick probably the first time I did the chemo. They did warn you. Your immune system gets really low, and also the chemo drugs are better than I guess what it used to be, they say, but you can get nauseous. And I remember, they told me I'm going to lose my hair. I had long hair before, and thank God it grew back. But anyway, but um, but I remember at that time I decided to also do alternative treatments before I started the chemo. So I
Mhm.
did see a wellness doctor who pumped some IVs into my vein, just to get my immune strong, and put me on a particular diet as well, really cutting back on sugar, and just trying to, I went to the gym. I was always going to the gym because that's my thing, but
Mhm.
just also maintaining my health the best as possible. But when I went for the first round of chemo, I think after probably the third day,
Mhm.
um, when my family was here, I was trying to get a wig because they were trying to, they told me where I could go to get wigs, right? For when
Mhm.
my hair was going to fall out. And I remember that morning not feeling well.
Mhm.
But I made an appointment to see this lady who, she was going to come in early. I didn't know at the time, to try to help me. And I remember calling her and saying, I don't feel very good right now. I don't, can I reschedule? And she wasn't very happy. She was like,
Mhm.
I set aside this time, and, and now you're not going to be able to come. So I felt guilty, and
Mhm.
I went ahead and thought, okay, fine. I'll just go ahead and go. Well, I'm driving my mom, my sister on the highway, and sure enough, I get sick. And
Mhm.
I am ready to throw up. And I told my sister, grab a bag. And
Mhm.
I am like sick, right?
Mhm.
But I was already near the exit. So I was able to just wait till I got off the exit, and I was just a mess. But
Mhm.
by then I was like, well, I guess I'm here.
Yeah.
The corner. And so I went ahead and I did go. But the lesson of that is, you know what, when you're not feeling good, especially when you go into cancer, others may not understand, but it's okay for you to say, sorry, no, I can't, and
Right.
set your boundaries there. I think I got a wig, but I didn't even like it in the end. It was, and I went all the way there because I wanted to have more of a natural look that looked more like my style. But in the end, I was like, oh, this doesn't even look like me. But anyway,
Mhm.
it is what it is. But that was my lesson learned. After the chemo,
Mhm.
I had to go through rounds of radiation.
Mhm.
And I think I went through 35 rounds. And at the time, they had to do
Wow.
extras just because when I did have the surgery, they did not clear my margins because it was so low. on my breast. It was like near the bone. And so it was like a little nerve wracking for me. I was like, oh my gosh, they didn't clear the margins. But what they said was with the radiation, they would really protect my organs, and then they would really just to be able to do the extras just to make sure that it didn't return. So I really have to trust my team.
Mm-hmm.
The amazing thing is, especially navigating, working, being a mom, and all of this, just going through a divorce. I was able to, they had just opened up a cancer treatment center literally 10 minutes from my house.
Nice.
Literally 10 minutes, probably more, 5 between my house and my office or where I was living. So I was able to get there easily and then to go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Another lesson learned is I was working. However, I don't think I took enough time just to process everything because I was so busy trying to do so many things all at once, now being a single parent. However, I think, one of the things I would, tell others is take the time for you as
Right.
well. I mean, I told all my clients I'm gonna look different after a while. You know what I mean? So I was gonna lose my hair, and I did, and I was able to, just take care of myself. So literally in July of 2014, I was able to finish my last round of radiation. The
Mm-hmm.
radiation got a little difficult near the end. I was one of those tough woman. However, it was, as much as they give you lotion and cream, everything you got to put on your breast, it gets really difficult when you start having blisters, right? And so, just from the radiation, it's almost like you're frying your skin.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember on that table, just lying there, and I started praying. I said, God, just help me to get through this next. I think I had like 5 left. This next 5, they kept saying, "Don't move, don't move, don't move," And when you're on the table,
Mm-hmm.
and I just laid there, can't move, tears streaming down my face, and just keep praying. I just kept praying, and there were times, I did lose weight, so I had to sort of switch my diet because I was eating too clean. I was eating so clean, and they tell you not to lose that much weight. So I was like, okay. I talked to my nutritionist and like, hey, you gotta, what can you put in there? A little bit more carbs, whatever it is, just to be able to maintain my weight.
Mm-hmm.
But I exercised. I was exhausted. Radiation sort of tires you out in the chemo, but I still try to get to that gym, try to work out, try to maintain my health, try to do whatever I needed to do. And in July, I was able to, have my last radiation. You ring this bell when you're finished. So I had my daughter come with me to ring the bell, that we're done.
Okay.
And I also involved her in the process of when my hair was falling out. I had her cut some. I have locks, so I had her cut some of my locks so she could be in the process of, okay, this is like the new mom, I guess. I'm gonna go to this phase.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I just, did whatever I could, and I did also worked with a spiritual coach who just helped me just to sort of stop, process. She talked about the importance of meditation, learning how to be still. And I just did a lot of praying and trusting God that there was going to be a purpose and a plan in going through this process. And the interesting thing is, as a therapist, I don't see a lot of clients now, but in the past, I remember a woman came who had also had breast cancer,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able just to help her process some of that and helping her with some of the guilt of, not going to the doctor for her checkup. She talked about, she always tells her kids, go for a checkup, go for a checkup. She
Mm-hmm.
said, but I never did it for myself. And so she was already at a stage 3, just helping her to process some of that and releasing some of the guilt, and just trusting the process of, her own healing journey. So yeah, so God does, when you go through different things, I truly believe that He will use your pain, whatever it is that you go through, for a purpose in helping others.
Yes. And that is your full survivor story. Now I have a few questions
Sure.
because
Mm.
I've had cysts on my breast before,
Yeah.
and they took this large needle and aspirated them.
Yes.
Have they offered that to you as an option, or are they saying, oh, it won't matter if you do it, they're just gonna come back, anyway? Because I was thinking, when you were saying that if you had them all aspirated and you felt something different, then you would know right away. And I'm only asking like for other women because some women don't know their breasts that well.
Yeah.
And if they find a cyst, they're not going to remember, where it is. And if they have multiple ones, they could drive themselves nuts. do you think that having them aspirated would be, a potential course of action, or just to really continue to do your self exams and know your body?
Yeah, I mean, I have had some aspirated in the past because it's been happening for a long time. So they've
Mhm.
done that, but they usually, for me, they would say that, if you keep doing it, then you can possibly get infections.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's what they told me anyway. So they don't like doing it a lot. And because I had so many, I don't think I have as many as I did even when I was a little younger. But again, so for me, it's also important to know your breast. If I'm not sure. So there are times that I think I just did an Instagram post probably about 2, 3 months ago
Mhm.
where I had to go get a mammogram. And I asked for one early. I think it was earlier than normal because I felt some pain
Mhm.
and it didn't feel like my normal pain. Because sometimes I feel a little bit of pain where they did the surgery still just because of scar tissues. And so, so then I was like, okay, I'm not sure, I'm checking myself, but I'm like, I think this was there before, but this feels like now scar tissues, in addition to the cyst. So they had me go in, and so it's always that, that feeling like, okay, is everything good, especially if you're not sure. So my main thing is if you're not sure, go ahead and ask the doctor, even if you're doing an ultrasound. I think they did an ultrasound and a mammogram for me for a couple months ago. But the aspiration, again, they don't really do that for me at this point, so they just do now just go for a yearly check unless I feel like there's something's off. So you do have to really know your breast.
Okay. And another thing that you said to me, I'm, overjoyed that you had such an amazing support system.
Yeah.
So when they first told you that you had cancer, who was the first person that you called to tell? I know you had the lady that, that you were interviewing at the time, but
Yeah.
what person did you call to say, I've been diagnosed with breast cancer?
I'm pretty sure it was my mom, and my sister. Those are my two go-tos. You know what I mean? Um, and yeah, and so, it's always a shock, but that's who I go to. Then later on, I think I told some close friends. I had a couple of friends that were close enough that I did talk to them.
Mhm.
And then I was attending a different church than normal. So, but at that time there was a woman. It was interesting. I went for prayer because I was really feeling distraught, and I went up, at the end of the service for prayer. And I think at that time there was a lot of people up for prayer. I forgot why they called that many people up, but I was there. And they said at that time, they said to look to your right and pray for the person beside you, right? So I looked to my right, and that person was already praying with someone else to their right. So then I was like, okay. So I looked to my left, and the woman that was beside me there looked to me. I guess I was her. So we prayed with each other. So she said, "What can I pray for?" And then I told her that I was going to a medical issue. I don't think I told her the details. And then she says, "Okay, what is it?" And I thought, okay, I guess I'll tell her. And so I told her that I was going through breast cancer. And then she said, I'm a breast cancer survivor.
Look at
And it was God orchestrating that just for me.
that.
So she prayed for me. And then at the end of the prayer, she took my information and then she said, I'm involved in a small group at church. I would love for you to come. So I did go to the small group. It was the end of the service. It was a small group. And that small group was just amazing. They prayed me through and prayed me through. And so, it was just a blessing just to have them. And then during that time, I was also, because of my divorce, going through a transition with my living arrangements because I was renting for about a year. And when I moved in, I already had the plan that I was going to buy my house and move out by that summer, And but I was going through, the cancer, I was going through divorce, but then I decided I was gonna still buy my house. That was not gonna stop me from getting there. So the interesting thing is at the end of it, I was able to my divorce was in July, my treatment was done in July, and I closed on my house that same week in July.
Wow.
So I actually had this amazing celebration. I was able to invite my mom came, my all the women that helped me was there. The women from the small group at church, they were there. So it became this amazing celebration
Hmm.
of and thankfulness for all these people that were just there. People came even during the move because I was still going through right before my last treatment, people were helping me unpack, you know, we had a
Yeah.
little party, you know what I mean? It was just truly amazing how they were all, there to support. So I wanted to thank them. So it was just great just to have them all come together and with the celebration.
Okay. And it's like I said, that is amazing in itself because some people don't even have folks around with them to the doctor. And you had a whole community of angels surrounded that,
Yeah.
like you said, were orchestrated by God.
Yeah.
So I'm glad of that. But I'm curious. You said you have a daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and how old was she at the time?
She was 3.5, maybe 4, 3 or 4.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So here you are looking at your precious little toddler.
Mm-hmm.
What was going through your mind? Even though you knew they caught it early,
Yeah.
were you having any worries or any concerns about, being alive to watch her grow up?
Yeah, I think initially, my initial thought when I got this diagnosis was, well, I take care of myself, you know what I mean? And I just figured that, well, God, and my discussion with God is, well, I guess if this is you allowing this to happen, then there's a reason for it, that I'm going to supposed to be helping other people. That's what I went through this whole dialogue. And that's before I got the full scope of the chemo, radiation, all of that stuff. Because I thought, okay, you know what? I'll just probably they'll take it out, and then I'll be good because it's that early stage. But then when they said, oh, it's moderately aggressive and got to go through all these rounds, then I was like, oh my goodness, that's when I got a little nervous, a little anxious. I also had a oncologist that was very she was very factual.
Okay.
So whenever I saw her, she would go through, this is what moderately aggressive looks like. And then this is what this looks like. And then I told her I was doing alternative treatment. And she said, no, you can't do that. It's going to interact with this. And
Hmm.
and then at the end of, I think I saw her twice. At the end of each of the meetings or the sessions with her, I was going in my car and I was crying.
Mhm.
And I realized that she wasn't the right person for me,
Right.
because I had to stay in this mindset that I was going to be healed and restored and I was going to be okay for my child. So I literally called and said, I need a different oncologist.
Mhm.
I can't do this one, not with this one. So they were able to switch me to this amazing a
Good.
Dr. Moorer, and who was just upbeat and just truly amazing. And I was able to he didn't have any issues with whatever I was doing. I did stop the I didn't go for any of those IV treatments, whatever I have to do. Those bags, the vitamin B's, all the minerals, until after the end of everything. I went back and sort of replenished my body
Mhm.
and put all those minerals back in, just to be able to be in that place of feeling healthier and stronger again. And so yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I kept doing was truly believing that God had a plan and reminding myself that I had to have this mindset that I was going to be healed and I was going to be fine. I was going to be here for her and I was going to, beat this. So it's important to have that positive mindset so that you don't go to this depression. I didn't
Mhm.
even really have time. I was so busy anyway, between trying to find the house, trying to work with my clients, trying to catch up on sleep, trying to deal with all my daughter's stuff. So I was busy. But then I had to try to take the time just to stop, process, and stay positive.
Okay. And when you were talking about her being a part, of your healing, and she was able to cut some of your locks, what
Yeah.
was that like for you?
It was I'm glad I did it,
Mhm.
because she didn't understand the seriousness of what she was doing, but it became like, oh, mommy, can I cut more? Can I cut more? Can I cut more? you know? So it became just a process of engaging her and feeling like, okay, you know what? It's normalizing it,
Mhm.
rather than me, showing up like, oh my God, my hair is all gone, and not so that she won't be scared. So I was glad I was able to do it. And so it became a normal process for her. And I started wearing wigs eventually too, though. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
And something you just said a second ago, I'm really glad that you decided to advocate for yourself because sometimes the physicians that you choose, when they aren't in tune with you and how you're feeling, they aren't the right one
You're
for
right.
you. Just because they're good and factual and all that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the one for you because sometimes they can speak life or sometimes they can speak death.
Right.
And if they're not speaking life, I don't want them. And
Right.
I'm glad you were able, to advocate for yourself. So how hard or how easy was it for you to advocate for yourself?
Well, remember, I am a licensed clinical social worker. I got my doctorate in counseling psychology as well. So for me, advocacy is something that I always believe in doing. I tell my clients to advocate for themselves. You sort of trained in that particular way. But I also tuned into my feelings and I knew how I felt. And so the moment that I had to stop and say, well, okay, every time I leave this lady's office, I'm in tears,
Right.
right? And obviously, you're going through a difficult process. But I think for me, hearing, understand, yeah, it's moderately aggressive, but the stats became the big thing. And I don't really go by stats. You know what I mean? I understand what the stats say. I understand it. I read it. I get it. But beyond the statistics, my faith is also really important. And I knew that God had a plan and a purpose. So I wasn't going to let the stats really scare me,
Mhm.
especially in the moderate aggressive stage, because it was really focused on, it's aggressive. So, it moderately aggressive. So this could happen or that can happen. So for me, advocating for myself is something that I knew I had to do to be able to stay positive.
Okay. So in July this year, it'll be 11 years that you're cancer
You are absolutely right.
And if someone were to come to you now, because they say they've heard your story, do you ever think that there's a possibility that you'll go back and see something else? Like you hear people all the time saying, oh, I've been cancer free for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. We're always constantly counting because I was a cancer survivor for 18 years. And then right after the 18th year, that's when I found I had thyroid cancer. And I still have thyroid cancer now. Do you ever, just think of those things like I'm looking forward to the next year to say that this is year 12, year 13, 14, 15.
You know what? I don't really think about so much my cancer
Mhm.
journey so much anymore. I think, as you just mentioned, 11 years, I just thought about it. I never thought about it being 11 years. I think maybe the 10th year I kind of remembered, so I think for me, it's always, especially when I go through having a mammogram, especially when, it's always in that process of thinking about, yeah, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good,
Mhm.
but I think for me, it's just lifestyle. And I remember when I went to the natural path doctor, it was actually more of he had a clinic, a wellness clinic, and it was the owner at the time. I don't think they're there anymore, but he said to me as I was taking a tour, he said, I did my own little little research. And he said that most people that end up having cancer that he's worked with in his center is because if you trace it back a year and a half to 2 years before, they've gone through, each one of his clients have gone through serious stressors,
Mhm.
whether the death of a family member, a divorce, something that has caused this prolonged stress.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, that's me. I'm in that category, right? But I will tell you, one of the things I understand is the impact of prolonged stress
Mhm.
in your body that happens internally that manifests itself in the body. And
Mhm.
so one of the things I have to always remind myself is, how then do I work through my stress? Because I'm really one of those people that I'm not the best at it. When things happen, yeah. When things happen, I try to fix it, and then when
Mhm.
I can't, then I'm stressed out, and that's where God always reminds me, surrender, surrender. But it's not always so easy to surrender. It's almost that constant daily reminder. But when it is a prolonged stress, then it does take an impact, take a toll. So I think for me, it's always when I'm under a lot of stress, I'm trying to remind myself, you don't want to go back there.
Right.
Right. And
Mhm.
so you have to learn to release. You got to work on doing this. You got to do, whatever it's going to take to be able to be okay. So that's really what goes through my mind. And I just sort of take each day at a time and not really worry about it. And I think about, okay, is it going to be 15 years out? Is it going to be whatever? It's almost like I'm trusting you, God. You got things for me to do. So I know you're not finished with me yet. So I'm just going to keep going and just being in that place of just trust
Okay.
and faith.
So if I were to find, say, five ladies now that are going through divorce and they have been recently diagnosed with breast cancer, what advice would you give them to help them get through or to see the light at the end of the tunnel?
I will say, strengthen your faith. I think when I look back, I remember doing a daily devotion. There was one on my phone, and each day there was like a word that kept coming. And a lot of it was about that reminder to trust in God, that God had a plan, that God had a purpose. So those are really encouraging things for my spirit to help me keep going. And then also to be able to find time for yourself. Self care is critical. Being able to make sure that you are doing healthy things, you're eating healthy, that you are um, exercising to get rid of your stress, that you're talking to someone. I had a spiritual coach at the time. Finding a coach, a therapist, just to be able to process some of that. Someone that's a professional is also very helpful. Having the support system in place, family, friends, whether you're going through divorce, whether you're going through cancer, whatever it is, you need to have a support system to be able to help you to when you're feeling down and when you're feeling discouraged. The support system is the one that they need to pick wisely because they need to encourage you, not to go there with you when you're sad and to scare you, but to be in that place where it's like, yeah, they tell you, you're going to be okay. I
Mm.
got you. I'm here. And finding a professional, a team of doctors, whether it's oncologists and radiologists and surgeons, and just to be able to who really works together and is advocating for you and want the best for you, just not another number of statistics. And then part of that was they do have support groups, whether it's for divorce, people that's going through divorce, as well as those who are going through cancer. I know um, they actually had a cancer support group. I only went to that once though. I'm really terrible at that. I was really busy, but yeah, but they do have that because some people really do need that. So I'm not sure if that's five, but those are the five. That's some of the things that's kind of really jumping out at me right now. But the big thing is just taking care of your mind, your body, and your spirit, and taking the time just to breathe and just to stop and do self care and keep praying, trusting God to help you to get to the other side.
Okay. And lastly, I know everybody's going to want to go to and listen to your podcast. Can you tell us the title of your podcast and where they can find it?
Yeah, so the title is Your Love Talk,
Mhm.
and it is on Spotify, Apple, all the typical listening, um, you know, environments to be able to get podcasts, as well as it's also on YouTube, and it's YouTube at Your Love Talk as well. So, and then I'm also on Instagram at Dr. Beverley Boothe, and on also Facebook, Dr. Beverley Boothe.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for letting us know where we can find you and where we can check out your podcast. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us before we jump off?
And maybe just one more thing. One of the things that I did do, again, this after I went through my journey beyond the book, was I decided to develop these affirmation cards, and it's really one of those cards you can actually affirm yourself daily. And it's also on my it's on my website. It's at yourlovetalk.com. And it's one of those things where you're feeling discouraged and you don't have somebody right there to encourage you. You just pick up a card and you read that to yourself. And we also have couples cards too for those who, you know, as a couple, you want to strengthen your relationship. It's got wonderful questions that you ask each other to get to know each other better. So again,
Nice.
it's at yourlovetalk.com.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And thank you so much for taking time out to be on Embracing the Fight. I appreciate you for being my guest.
Thank you so much for having me here. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. And thank you to all the listeners who've taken time out today to listen to Embracing the Fight, this episode 117 of Survivor's Story. I truly hope that you heard some things that resonated with you that will cause you to act, move forward to help improve your health, lower your stress level, and get you out of a situation that you may not choose to be in or something that you feel like you can't break free from. Take lessons from this story and move on with your life. And again, thank you so much for watching this episode of Embracing the Fight. Have an absolutely amazing day.